British divided the Indian subcontinent based on religious identity. The All India Muslim League carved out Pakistan, and the Indian National Congress secured India. Still, the Shiromani Akali Dal was left empty-handed as the British made their exit in 1947. Despite the Sikh community's unwavering collaboration with the colonial rulers, the Sikhs' aspirations for an independent state and the inclusion of additional territories were ruthlessly crushed in the violent storm of partition. By choosing to merge with India, the Akali leadership shackled their community to a colossal Hindu majority, where they made up a mere 1%. Historians have wrestled with the mystery of this crushing political defeat. Sher Muhammad Gruel argues that the Sikhs' downfall was due to their naivety, as they failed to grasp the complex and treacherous nature of Punjab's political chessboard. Sangat Singh lays the blame squarely on the shoulders of incompetent Akali leadership. At the same time, Sardar Hukam Singh insists that the Akalis had no real alternatives, forcing them to side with India as the lesser of two evils. However, these perspectives only scratch the surface of a much deeper and more tangled reality. The truth is that a combination of powerful forces conspired against Sikh political ambitions, sealing their fate. This video delves into the critical factors that drove the Akali leaders to reject Pakistan and throw their lot in with India, forever altering the destiny of the Sikh community. Both Muslims and Sikhs had once ruled Punjab, making them equally confident in claiming their political inheritance when the British prepared to withdraw from India. While Punjab was a stronghold for Muslims due to its demographic dominance, it held an even deeper significance for the Sikhs, as it was the sacred birthplace of their gurus. For Muslims, Islam had originated in Arabia, and Punjab had welcomed many Muslim settlers from other lands. In contrast, Sikhism was a homegrown faith, and its followers were deeply rooted in the region, reinforcing their belief that Punjab was their rightful homeland. Historically, Hindus had also ruled Punjab at different times, but after 1849, the British became the new masters after toppling Sikh rule. Their governance introduced political reforms that prioritized majority rule, causing anxiety among religious minorities. Punjab's demographic complexity only deepened under British rule, but Sikhs found themselves particularly vulnerable due to their scattered presence across the region. Unlike Muslims or Hindus, Sikhs did not hold a majority in any district, further weakening their political position. Although the British had shown them favoritism, their efforts to negotiate constitutional settlements with major national parties left the Sikhs at a disadvantage, as they were largely confined to Punjab. Over time, Sikhs and Muslims developed a rivalry, shaped by historical and religious factors that influenced British Punjab's political landscape. The influence of Muslim saints played a crucial role in the region, as they spread Islamic teachings based on equality, brotherhood, and simplicity, attracting a significant number of converts, especially among the oppressed and marginalized Hindus. However, the eventual rise of Muslim orthodoxy and extremism led to internal fractures within Muslim rule in India. This created a religious void, particularly in Punjab, which Guru Nanak Dev, 1469 to 1539, sought to fill by blending elements of Hinduism and Islam into Sikhism. His teachings drew many converts, mainly from Hindu communities, but also a small number of Muslims. Sikhism emerged during the era of Muslim rule, with Guru Nanak witnessing the reigns of Ibrahim Lodi and Babur. The relationship between Sikh gurus and Muslim rulers was expected to be that of subjects and sovereigns, yet the gurus chose to live independently, refusing to submit to political authority. This assertion of personal freedom often led to conflict, as rulers saw their political involvement as a threat. Consequently, Sikh gurus were frequently summoned, pressured, imprisoned, tortured, and even executed. While these actions were politically motivated, Sikhs perceived them as direct attacks on their religious leaders, deepening animosity between the two communities. The execution of Sikh gurus became a lasting wound that prevented Muslim-Sikh relations from ever truly mending. Though they coexisted in Punjab, their religious legacies kept them divided, with each group treating the other as a rival. This cycle of hostility continued under both Sikh and Muslim rulers until the British arrived in Punjab. Following the Anglo-Sikh Wars in 1846 and 1849, the British took control, yet surprisingly, a period of cooperation emerged between Sikhs, Muslims, and Hindus. All three communities proved loyal to the British and became pillars of colonial rule. British reforms in education, politics, economy, agriculture, and publishing sparked a new sense of communal empowerment, which later evolved into nationalist consciousness. As people sought greater rights and representation, competition between religious groups intensified, leading to deepening communalism. The two world wars, 1914 to 1919 and 1939 to 1945, severely weakened British colonial power, fueling nationalist movements across India. Local communities, including the Sikhs, had sacrificed their lives on the battlefield, expecting fair treatment in return. While Sikhs were favoured by the British in military and administrative matters, they suffered politically. Their demands were repeatedly dismissed, while Hindus and Muslims successfully secured major concessions and political advantages. A multitude of factors contributed to this disastrous outcome for the Sikhs, leaving them sidelined in the fight for political supremacy in British India. During British rule, the way they controlled Punjab was by relying on influential local families. The rural elite, eager to maintain their status, aligned themselves with the British, who rewarded them with land and privileges. This made these landlords even more powerful among the locals. Meanwhile, common people didn't have voting rights, which meant they couldn't form organizations to push for their interests. In the beginning, Sikh leadership mostly came from this wealthy landowning class, but despite their efforts, they weren't very effective in advancing Sikh interests. The Khalsa National Party, which had British backing, enjoyed political advantages as part of the government. Meanwhile, a different kind of Sikh leadership started emerging from the lower middle class, one that was more aggressive but lacked political strategy. The Akalis, for instance, opposed almost everyone. The British, the Congress, the Muslim League, the Unionist Party, and even other Sikhs who weren't on their side. However, at different times, they also worked with some of these same groups, like the Muslim League in the Northwest Frontier Province, the Unionist Party in Punjab, and even the British and Congress. Leadership from wealthy families can be useful, especially when there's no strong grassroots leadership yet. In contrast, leadership from the lower classes takes time to break free from feelings of inferiority and past oppression. Many of the Sikh leaders from this background struggled with these challenges. They sometimes took an aggressive stance, but lost their momentum when British officials like Major Short and Sir Penderell Moon intervened. When dealing with Congress, Sikh leaders often made compromises on political issues. The Sikh aristocrats dominated politics, and the Akalis saw them as their main rivals, portraying them negatively to the Sikh community. However, completely ignoring these traditional politicians wasn't a smart move because they had connections with both Muslim leaders and the British, which could have helped build alliances. The Akalis were popular at the grassroots level, which gave them political influence, but sidelining experienced politicians weakened their movement. Another major issue was control over Gurdwara funds. Some Akali leaders became more focused on gaining financial control rather than serving the community. They even accepted money from Hindu leaders and were willing to make compromises for financial gain. This obsession with wealth hurt their movement. Gurmit Singh even argued that Akali leaders were selfish, always looking for personal benefits rather than working selflessly for the Sikh cause. There were also violent clashes among different Sikh factions. For example, during a 1941 by-election in Batala, Akalis and supporters of Mohinder Singh fought with bamboo sticks and swords, leaving some injured. Similarly, police records show that Akalis and Nihangs fought over land at Nankana Sahib. The Akalis opposed the Nihangs when they saw them as a threat to their control over Gurdwara administration, but later supported them when it suited their interests. This kind of opportunistic politics weakened the Sikh movement. Sikh leaders often presented themselves as nationalists, but their actual political stance was communal. They were unsure about their place in both provincial and national politics. In 1973, Sardar Ujjal Singh admitted that Sikhs had always tried to balance their national outlook with their need to protect Sikh interests. But at the same time, they kept denying that their politics were communal. If they had embraced their communal identity earlier, they might have found better solutions to their issues. H.V. Hodson described how Sikhs and Muslims had conflicted for over 250 years, first for survival and later for control of Punjab. Instead of insisting they were nationalists, Sikh leaders could have openly positioned themselves as a communal party. Even Gandhi advised Master Tara Singh that their political struggle was communal and their violent approach didn't align with Congress's strategy. But instead of taking this as constructive advice, Sikhs saw it as an insult and ignored it. Sikhism originally drew most of its followers from Hinduism, and that historical connection continued to shape Sikh political thinking. Even though the Congress repeatedly betrayed the Sikhs on important issues, Sikh leaders never tried to break free from Hindu influence. One major example was the Ravi Pledge of 1929, where the Congress promised that no constitutional decisions would be made without Sikh approval. But in reality, they never kept this promise. The Congress would go ahead and negotiate with the British and the All India Muslim League without even consulting the Sikhs. Despite this, the Akalis and the Central Akali Dal kept encouraging their supporters to join the Congress in large numbers, hoping to strengthen their influence from within. But when it mattered, the Congress consistently sidelined the Sikhs. Even then, Akali leaders never dared to break away and follow their independent political path. In the long run, their dependence on the Congress turned out to be harmful to the Sikh community's future. The Akali leaders heavily relied on religion and infused violence into their political strategies. They used emotional appeals to stir up the masses, pushing them toward aggressive political action. Master Tara Singh, in a surge of emotionalism, went so far as to invoke Guru Gobind Singh, controversially stating during the communal award agitation that if the Guru did not help them achieve victory, then he was not their savior. Of course, he could not actually abandon Sikhism as he had implied, so it was clearly a rhetorical move meant to provoke strong emotions among his followers. However, such statements were not fitting for a leader who held the religious trust of his community. Sikh leaders frequently referenced the Khalsa and Guru Gobind Singh's teachings, portraying him as the force that had weakened Muslim rule in India. Their anti-Muslim stance aligned them with the Hindu Mahasabha in Punjab, but this was a strategic mistake. Instead of allowing religious rivalries to dominate their politics, they should have focused on negotiations and discussions to secure the best possible outcome for the Sikh community. Yet, rather than engaging in meaningful dialogue, they presented exaggerated concerns to British officials, especially Punjab's governor, Evan Jenkins, claiming that the Muslim League aimed to wipe out the Sikhs and Sikhism entirely. One of the most infamous incidents associated with Master Tara Singh was the claim that he had brandished a kirpan, sword, on the stairs of the Punjab Assembly in defiance of the Pakistan plan. However, in a later conversation with Dr. Bhai Harbans Lal, he denied this ever happened. Instead, he admitted that some of his own supporters had exaggerated the story to glorify Akali's courage and bolster opposition to the creation of Pakistan. In his own words, the story had been made up by politicians with vested interests to incite the public and was picked up by over-enthusiastic news reporters. Even some of my Akali followers spread the story, thinking it would help our cause against Pakistan. At the time, violence became the defining theme of Sikh politics, ultimately overshadowing the legitimacy of their demands and weakening their position. Pertinently, the Sikhs made a critical mistake by relying too much on British officials, particularly the Governor of Punjab and the Viceroy, in the final years of British rule. Despite repeated advice to engage in negotiations with the Muslim League and the Congress, who were the real power players in India's future, the Sikh leadership kept appealing to British authorities, hoping they would do something for the Sikhs. In reality, neither the League nor the Congress could afford to ignore the Sikhs, given their influence in Punjab. However, instead of actively bargaining with these parties, the Sikh leaders placed their hopes on the goodwill of the British. This was especially evident in their repeated pleas to Lord Mountbatten, who merely passed their requests to Jawaharlal Nehru, only for Nehru to reject them outright. By failing to engage with the actual decision-makers and continuing to depend on a fading colonial power, the Sikhs missed crucial opportunities to secure a stronger political position. As a result, they found themselves sidelined and forced to endure the devastating consequences of partition. Similarly, there were internal divisions among the Sikhs, and it impacted their political standing during the last decades of British rule. The Akali Dal, the main Sikh political party, alienated various Sikh factions, including aristocrats, communists, lower caste Sikhs, and Congress-supporting Sikhs, instead of uniting them. This weakened the Sikh political movement. The Akali Dal itself suffered from factionalism, with groups like the Giani Kartar Singh and Nagoke factions competing for influence. Many Sikhs held dual memberships in different parties, creating a lack of discipline and divided loyalties. Some argue that the Sikh masses never fully supported the Akali Dal, leading to its failure. However, others believe that the Akali leadership was responsible for not securing enough seats in the 1946 Punjab elections. The masses had always responded enthusiastically to Akali calls for action and sacrifices, but the leadership's inconsistent stance, sometimes siding with Congress, sometimes seeking British support, confused the community. Master Tara Singh, the most prominent Sikh leader of the time, made strategic mistakes. He opposed the British but relied on their advice. He promoted Sikh unity but failed to keep all factions together. His leadership style lacked the flexibility needed to navigate the rapidly changing political landscape. Critics also point out that his background as a school headmaster did not prepare him for high-level politics. Unlike other major politicians of the time, he lacked legal training or influential family connections, which made it harder for him to negotiate effectively. Demographically, the Sikhs were at a disadvantage since they were not a majority in any district of Punjab. This made it difficult to demand a separate Sikh state or significant political autonomy. The Sikh leadership aligned with Congress, but was later sidelined when Congress opposed Sikh demands for an independent territory. Despite opportunities for dialogue with the Muslim League, the Sikhs remained hostile toward them, further limiting their political options. Pertinently, the position of the governor of Punjab had a significant influence on the province's affairs under British rule. The governor was meant to carry out their duties with integrity and uphold the democratic system, protecting the minorities in Punjab. Early on, the British used the office to support the pro-government unionists, as they needed a peaceful Punjab for their army and other interests. However, after the 1937 elections, when Indian political parties became more involved in regional politics, the governor's approach remained outdated, and this contributed to the weakening of communal harmony. The Sikhs trusted Governor Evan Jenkins, but he didn't deliver for them. He used his relationship with Sikh leaders to gather information, which he then passed on to the Viceroy. Jenkins could have helped ease tensions between Sikhs and Muslims by encouraging the Sikhs to join the League ministry after the 1945 elections. This could have restored some communal peace and perhaps even maintained territorial unity. Instead, he resisted the League ministry and supported undemocratic policies, which eventually led to the partition of the Punjab. The Akali leadership made a mistake by placing too much trust in the British, especially in Jenkins and Mountbatten. While it was their right to share their grievances with the British, relying solely on them was not a wise strategy. The partition plan had already been agreed upon by all the major parties, yet the Sikhs kept pushing for special treatment from the British, which ultimately didn't help their cause. Jenkins' role became more like that of a messenger, simply relaying reports to the Viceroy instead of taking decisive action to address the rising tensions in the province. On July 30, 1947, Jenkins reported on a Sikh protest at Nankana Sahib, but he failed to take action or prevent further violence. His focus remained on the transfer of power rather than on restoring peace. Even though Jenkins had a good relationship with the Sikhs, he failed to persuade them to avoid violent tactics. In the end, he couldn't use his influence effectively, and his inaction contributed to the worsening situation in Punjab. After the 1946 elections, the principle of majority rule, which is key to democracy, was completely disregarded by the anti-League forces, including the governor and the Congress. Despite the League being the largest party in the Punjab Legislative Assembly, the Congress, Unionists, Sikhs, and other non-Muslims joined forces to form a coalition government under Khizr Hayat Tiwana, even though the League should have had the first chance to form a government. This decision ignored the will of the Muslim majority and created political tension. The Sikhs made a big mistake by not supporting the League, which would have secured their share in the political process. As the British were preparing to leave, the Sikhs faced three main choices: creating their state, Khalistan, joining Pakistan, or joining India. The first option lacked a solid foundation due to the scattered Sikh population and internal divisions. Joining Pakistan was unappealing due to past communal violence, and joining India seemed like a betrayal since the Sikhs had long been marginalized. Despite these options, the Sikh leadership failed to take decisive action and instead became too reliant on the Congress, who had repeatedly let them down. The Punjab lacked strong leadership, which contributed to the chaos during such a critical time in history. The Sikh leadership was also overwhelmed by powerful figures like Jinnah, Gandhi, and Nehru. While the League had the legitimate right to lead after their electoral victory, the Sikhs didn't recognize this, focusing instead on their grievances and conflicts with the League and others. In conclusion, the Sikhs made a critical error by siding with Congress and opting for a united India, where they were a tiny minority. Their disunity, weak leadership, and failure to assess the political landscape led to their eventual regret, as predicted by Jinnah. The Sikhs' decision to join India in 1947, despite the League's offers, resulted in them losing out on any significant political concessions, ultimately leading to the struggles they faced post-partition.
The streets of Old Delhi, a pitched battle between Hindus and Sikhs.
Punjab in the 1980s wasn't just a battleground, it was a ticking time bomb. What started as political demands for Sikh rights spiraled into one of India's deadliest insurgencies, leaving over 25,000 people dead and an entire generation scarred. Armed militants, mass assassinations, hijackings, and a dramatic showdown inside the Golden Temple. This was no ordinary rebellion. How did a movement for autonomy turn into a violent struggle for a separate Sikh nation? How did the government respond with brutal force, leading to one of the most controversial military operations in Indian history? And most importantly, why does the idea of Khalistan still refuse to die today? Buckle up, because this is the real story of the Khalistan insurgency, one the world was never meant to hear. Pinpointing the exact start of a secessionist movement is never easy, especially when its supporters argue that their cause is deeply rooted in history. This is the case with the Khalistan movement. While scholars generally place its timeline between 1981 and 1993, since that's when Punjab saw the most intense Sikh militancy, leading to over 25,000 deaths, the seeds of the movement were actually sown a few years earlier. One key event happened on April 13, 1978, during Baisakhi. A group of Orthodox Sikhs, mainly from the Akhand Kirtani Jatha, a Sikh sect emphasizing kirtan and discipline, and led by Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, protested outside the headquarters of the Sant Nirankari sect, a Sikh reformist movement promoting spirituality whom they considered heretics. The protest quickly turned violent, leaving 13 Orthodox Sikhs and 2 Sant Nirankaris dead. As expected, both sides tell different stories. Orthodox Sikhs claim they were peacefully protesting, while the Nirankaris insist they were attacked and had to defend themselves. The aftermath of this violence deepened the divide between Sikhs and Hindus, especially when an Indian court acquitted all 62 Nirankaris involved, including their leader, Baba Gurbachan Singh. Many Sikhs saw this as further proof of the Indian state's bias against them. This event also gave rise to Babar Khalsa, a militant group founded by Bibi Amarjit Kaur, the widow of one of the slain protesters. Originally formed to target the Sant Nirankaris, the group soon became deeply involved in the Khalistan movement, carrying out violent attacks against both Hindus and the Indian state. By 1981, tensions between Sikhs and Hindus in Punjab were clearly rising. Several key events fueled this divide. First, at a Sikh educational conference in March 1981, US-based speaker Ganga Singh Dhillon publicly stated that Sikhs were a separate nation and should have their own state. Though no official resolution was passed, the crowd erupted with slogans of Khalistan Zindabad. This raised suspicions in New Delhi about the true intentions of Sikh political leaders. Then, in September, veteran journalist Lala Jagat Narayan, an outspoken critic of the Khalistan movement, was assassinated by Sikh militants. Later that month, the Khalistani group Dal Khalsa hijacked an Indian Airlines plane, escalating tensions further. But perhaps the biggest issue was the central government's failure to address Sikh political demands, particularly those outlined in the Anandpur Sahib Resolution. Originally drafted in 1973, this resolution called for greater autonomy for Punjab, fair distribution of water resources, and the transfer of Chandigarh to Punjab. While its demands were mostly political, many Hindus saw them as separatist in nature, leading to further distrust. By 1982, frustration was mounting. The Akali Dal, led by Sant Harchand Singh Longowal, launched the Dharam Yudh Morcha, a mass protest movement demanding Sikh rights. The movement gained widespread Sikh support, even uniting different Akali factions and drawing in the increasingly influential preacher Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala. Tensions reached a boiling point when, during the 1982 Asian Games in Delhi, Sikhs travelling from Punjab were blocked by Haryana police under orders from Chief Minister Bhajan Lal. This was justified as a security measure, but it left a deep sense of humiliation among Sikhs, who felt they were being treated as second-class citizens. Many saw it as further proof that the government did not trust them. Throughout 1983, the Akali Dal escalated their protests, staging roadblocks, rail disruptions, and strikes. But when these efforts failed to bring significant political concessions, more radical elements gained influence. Bhindranwal himself criticized the Akali leadership for using peaceful protests, arguing that begging won't get you anything unless you stand up to the government. By late 1983, violence had spiraled out of control. In October, Sikh militants stopped a Delhi-bound bus, separated Hindu passengers from Sikhs, and executed the Hindus on the spot. This brutal act was a turning point. Punjab's Chief Minister Darbara Singh resigned, and the central government imposed President's rule on October 10th, taking direct control of the state. Bhindranwal saw this as proof of anti-Sikh bias, stating, "When 6 Hindus are killed, the government falls. But when 200 Sikhs are gunned down by police, nothing happens. This shows that Hindu lives are more important to the government than Sikh lives." Despite imposing the president's rule, the government failed to curb the growing militancy. In fact, the Khalistani movement only gained more traction. At this point, moderate demands like the Anandpur Sahib Resolution were no longer enough. Many militants declared that unless the resolution was fully implemented, Khalistan was the only solution. As one militant leader, Bibi Amarjit Kaur, put it, "If the centre wants peace in Punjab, they must fulfill our demands. If not, there will be Khalistan." By the end of 1983, Sant Bhindranwal had moved into the Akal Takht. It is the highest temporal authority in Sikhism and serves as the supreme seat of Sikh political and spiritual power, which is inside the Golden Temple complex. This was a big deal because it showed how much support he had among Sikhs at the time. It also made it clear that trying to divide people into moderates and extremists wasn't so simple. After all, Bhindranwal couldn't have taken up residence there without at least the silent approval of the Shiromani Gurdwara Parbandhak Committee, SGPC, and its leader Gurcharan Singh Tora. KPS Gill, who was Punjab's top police officer during the height of the violence, later said he didn't see much difference between the Akalis and the militants. In his view, the Akalis weren't really willing to take a firm stand against terrorism. By early 1984, with violence still raging across Punjab, many government officials and media figures openly called Bhindranwale the leader of the militants, accusing him of directing or inspiring militant attacks against Hindus. Then, on June 2, 1984, the central government decided to take drastic action. They completely sealed off Punjab from the rest of India, set up armed checkpoints at the borders, and imposed a media blackout. Over the next few days, the Indian Army carried out raids on more than 40 Gurdwaras suspected of sheltering militants or stockpiling weapons. The most dramatic of these was Operation Blue Star, June 3 to 6, 1984, when the army stormed the Golden Temple. The battle ended with the surrender of senior Akali leaders, the deaths of over 490 civilians and militants, including Bhindranwale, and the loss of 83 army personnel. This military operation shocked and angered Sikhs worldwide. Many felt deeply humiliated and even stopped identifying as Indian. Even though 4 of the 6 army generals leading the attack were Sikhs, it didn't ease the pain or resentment in the community, and things only got worse after that. Right after Blue Star, the government launched Operation Woodrose to track down remaining militants in rural Punjab. But in the process, many innocent Sikh youth were harassed, arrested and tortured. Some, fearing for their lives, fled to Pakistan, only to return later as trained Khalistani militants. Anger turned into a burning desire for revenge. Many believed Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister of India at that time, had crossed a line that couldn't be forgiven. Among them were her own Sikh bodyguards, Bent Singh and Satwant Singh, who decided to deliver justice themselves by gunning her down on October 31, 1984. Over the next 3 days, November 1st to 3rd, horrific anti-Sikh riots erupted across northern India, especially in Delhi. At least 2,200 Sikhs were brutally killed, and many compared the violence to the horrors of partition in 1947. For Sikhs, 1984 was a year of tragedy and betrayal. Operation Blue Star, Operation Woodrose, and the anti-Sikh riots left a deep wound. Many felt alienated from their Hindu neighbors and the Indian government like never before. Even today, these events remain a major reason why pro-Khalistan sentiment still exists in some circles. After Indira Gandhi's assassination, her son Rajiv Gandhi took over as Prime Minister and won a huge victory in the December 1984 elections. Early in his tenure, he seemed determined to find a political solution to the Punjab crisis. On March 11, 1985, he ordered the release of jailed Akali leaders, including Sant Longowal. This led to the Rajiv Longowal Accord, which attempted to address Sikh demands outlined in the Anandpur Sahib Resolution. However, the agreement was never fully implemented because some Akali factions, particularly Prakash Singh Badal, opposed it, calling it a sellout. Some analysts believe Congress abandoned the accord to avoid losing support in other parts of India, especially in the Hindi-speaking regions, where it could be seen as favoring minorities. On August 17, 1985, Rajiv Gandhi announced elections in Punjab, signaling an end to the president's rule. Despite militant threats urging people to boycott the vote, and even after Sant Longowal's assassination, the elections went ahead successfully, with a strong voter turnout of 67.58%. The Shiromani Akali Dal, Longowal, led by Surjit Singh Barnala, won the majority of seats in the Punjab Assembly for the first time, though their vote share was only slightly higher than Congress, 38.6% versus 37.9%. However, any hope for stability quickly faded. The Barnala government struggled to control militancy, and when the central government failed to transfer Chandigarh to Punjab as promised, it further weakened their position. On January 26, 1986, the very day Chandigarh was supposed to be handed over, a massive gathering of Sikhs at the Golden Temple installed a pro-militant Jathedar leader and announced the formation of a 5-member Panthic committee to work towards an independent Khalistan. This committee included the Khalistan Commando Force, KCF, led by Wasan Singh Zafarwal, which became a major force in the pro-Khalistani insurgency. Just a few months later, on April 29, 1986, they issued the Declaration of Khalistan from the Golden Temple. The government responded immediately with Operation Black Thunder 1, sending in security forces to flush out militants. Unlike Operation Blue Star, this raid didn't cause much damage to the temple, but it was largely ineffective. Punjab's top cop, Julio Ribeiro, admitted that they only managed to capture a few minor militants. The real damage, however, was political. Since Chief Minister Barnala had approved the operation, his credibility among Sikhs took a massive hit. At that time, many in the community were still sympathetic to the militants, and his involvement in the raid made him look like a puppet of the central government. In May 1987, KPS Gill took over as the Director General of Police DGP in Punjab, replacing Julio Ribeiro. One of his first major moves was launching Operation Black Thunder 2, another raid on the Golden Temple. Unlike previous operations, this one was conducted openly, with full media coverage. It was a major success for Gill. Militants surrendered without much resistance, which severely damaged their image and boosted the morale of the Punjab police, who played a leading role this time. Despite this success, Punjab's situation remained unstable. On June 11, 1987, after 20 months in power and more than 1,000 lives lost to insurgency, the Barnala government was dismissed and President's rule was reimposed. Over the next few years, militancy only intensified, worsened by the release of Sikh prisoners, known as the Jodhpur Détenus, in 1988, and the continued flow of well-armed militants returning from Pakistan. The influence of militants in Punjab wasn't limited to violence, it extended into everyday life. Groups like the Khalsa Panchayats began resolving village disputes, effectively replacing government institutions in some areas. By early 1991, during the peak of the insurgency, reports suggested that in parts of rural Punjab, especially near the border, militants weren't just running a parallel government, they were the government. In contrast to the Indian government's portrayal of them as terrorists, some militants gained local support by cracking down on social problems like alcoholism and drug addiction. However, as time went on, their image suffered. Many resorted to extorting money from civilians, carrying out random killings, and even committing rape and forced marriages. Some Khalistan supporters argue that these actions were carried out by government infiltrators or black cats planted to discredit their movement. Dr. Paramjit Singh Ajrawat, a US-based Khalistani leader, claimed that after Operation Black Thunder the Senu, the Indian government sent disguised agents, posing as Sikhs with long beards, into the community to commit violent acts, extort money and spread fear, all in an effort to suppress the movement for Khalistan. While it's true that the government did infiltrate militant groups, it would be misleading to blame all criminal actions on these infiltrators alone. In the end, the Khalistan movement collapsed due to a mix of factors: the moral decline of many militants, internal rivalries, the rejection of violence by ordinary Punjabis, and the brutal counterinsurgency tactics of KPS Gill's Punjab police all played a role. After years of rising violence, the number of deaths from militant attacks and counter-terror operations peaked in 1991 at 5,265, before falling to 3,883 in 1992, and then dropping dramatically to just 871 in 1993. On February 25, 1992, President's rule in Punjab was lifted for the last time. The state elections followed soon after, but with most factions of the Shiromani Akali Dal boycotting, voter turnout was just 24.3%. Unsurprisingly, the Congress Party won a landslide victory, securing 87 of the 117 seats in the Punjab Legislative Assembly. By 1993, Khalistani militancy had been reduced to isolated incidents, the most significant being the assassination of Punjab Chief Minister Bant Singh in 1995. While the idea of Khalistan has not disappeared entirely, it no longer holds a major place in mainstream Punjabi politics. Similarly, the Anandpur Sahib Resolution and the Rajiv Longowal Accord have become largely irrelevant to political discourse. Reflecting on the years of insurgency, Tarlochan Singh, a retired statesman and former member of the Rajya Sabha, offered a sobering assessment. He noted that while many policemen and soldiers lost their lives, the government itself suffered no real losses. Instead, the greatest damage was borne by the Sikh community. An entire generation of young men was lost. He lamented that those who took up arms in the name of Sikhism ultimately harmed their own people, fostering suspicion about Sikh loyalty in the rest of India, a perception that lingers even today. This video has provided a concise overview of the key events of the Khalistan militancy from 1981 to 1993. However, the roots of the conflict go deeper, arguably all the way back to the partition of India. Partition not only set a precedent for religious-based separatism, but also weakened India's secular foundation. In 1897, the British Empire celebrated a grand event, Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. It marked 60 years of her reign, and to showcase the power of the empire, military contingents from across the world were invited to London. Among them was a group of Sikh soldiers from the British Indian Army, brave warriors known for their strength and discipline. One of these men was Risaldar Major Kesur Singh, a cavalry officer. On return from London, they were supposed to return through Canada because other military contingents were on the ship. Pertinently, Canada was also a British colony at that time. However, on return, these Sikh soldiers made a stop in Canada, a land that was still new and unfamiliar to them. But for Kesur Singh, this stop was more than just a brief visit. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Instead of returning to India, he stayed behind, becoming the first Sikh settler in Canada. This small but significant moment would pave the way for thousands of Sikhs who would later come to Canada in search of opportunity and a better life. Welcome to our YouTube channel, Typographic Man. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's move on a journey to trace the deep-rooted Sikh-Canada connection. From early struggles to political power, from migration waves to cultural influence, join us as we explore this incredible story. Stay tuned. In 1809, Charles Metcalfe, a representative of the British East India Company, signed a treaty with Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the ruler of the Sikh Empire. This agreement safeguarded the Sutlej states, strengthening diplomatic ties between the Sikhs and the British. Metcalfe's connection to the Sikh Empire went beyond politics. While stationed in Lahore, he formed a relationship with a Sikh woman from the royal court, and together they had 3 sons. Later in life, Metcalfe moved to Canada, where he served as Governor-General of the province of Canada from 1843 to 1845. As tensions between Britain and the United States simmered in the 1860s, Canada's first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, recognized the strength of Sikh warriors. In a letter written in 1867, he stated a scenario where Britain could deploy an army of Sikhs across the Pacific Ocean, securing San Francisco and California as a preventive measure for protecting Montreal and Canada. This statement reflected the deep military trust the British had in Sikh soldiers. By 1849, after the Second Anglo-Sikh War, the British East India Company annexed Punjab, bringing the Sikh homeland under British rule. Despite their resistance, Sikhs soon became an integral part of the British military. Their unwavering loyalty and bravery during the Indian Rebellion of 1857 led the British to reward them with key military ranks. From the battlefields of Punjab to the political landscape of Canada, Sikhs played a crucial role in the expansion of the British Empire. These early historical events later also influenced Sikh migration to Canada, shaping the community we see today. It all began in 1902, when the first Sikh settlers arrived in Golden, British Columbia, seeking employment at the Columbia River Lumber Company. Pertinently, during British rule, India faced economic hardship, restrictive policies, and limited opportunities. The British prioritized resource extraction over local development, leaving many, including Sikhs, struggling with poverty and land shortages. In contrast, Canada, though also a British colony, had better wages, industrial growth, and land ownership opportunities. Sikhs found work in railroads, lumber, and agriculture, offering financial stability that was unavailable in India. Racial barriers existed, but Canada's economy provided hope for a better future. Unlike India, where British policies suppressed local prosperity, Canada's expanding economy and infrastructure needs created opportunities, making it a more attractive destination for migrants. Thus, the early Sikh immigrants found work in laying railway tracks, working in sawmills, and laboring in mines. Despite facing lower wages than white workers, they persevered, earning enough to send money back to India. Eventually, later they helped family members with immigration. Their determination and strong work ethic made them an essential part of British Columbia's workforce, particularly in the lumber industry. Notably, while Sikhs were building Canada's infrastructure, they were also building their faith and community. In 1904, Man Singh brought over a copy of the Guru Granth Sahib, making it the first known Sikh scripture in Canada. Just 2 years later, in 1906, the Khalsa Diwan Society was established in Vancouver, providing a spiritual and cultural home for Sikh immigrants. Between 1904 to 1940, 95% of all South Asian immigrants to Canada were Sikhs from Punjab. At first, they were met with little government or media attention, as Canada was more focused on restricting Chinese and Japanese immigration. During these early years, Sikh settlers found Canada to be a land of opportunity, where they could work hard and build a future. The first ever Gurdwara in Canada and North America was built in 1905 by early Sikh settlers in Golden, British Columbia. Unfortunately, it was destroyed by fire in 1926. The second Gurdwara came up in 1908 in Kitsilano, Vancouver, serving the growing Sikh community, many of whom worked in the nearby sawmills along False Creek. The design of this temple was inspired by the Chief Khalsa Diwan Temple in Hong Kong, a common stop for Sikhs on their way to Canada. However, in 1970, the Kitsilano Gurdwara was demolished, and the Temple Society moved to the newly built Gurdwara on Ross Street in South Vancouver. Today, the oldest standing Gurdwara in Canada is the Gur Sikh Temple in Abbotsford, British Columbia. Built in 1911, it was declared a National Historic Site in 2002, recognizing its importance to Sikh history in Canada. More Gurdwaras followed as Sikh communities expanded. The fourth one was built in Victoria in 1912, the fifth at Fraser Mills in Coquitlam in 1913, and the sixth in Queensborough, New Westminster, in 1919. That same year, another Gurdwara was also established in Paldi on Vancouver Island, marking the steady growth of Sikh presence and religious institutions across Canada. Moving back to the topic, in 1905, early Sikh pioneers settled in Abbotsford, British Columbia, working mainly on farms and in the lumber industry. Back then, most South Asian immigrants were Sikhs, but due to a lack of knowledge about different religions, they were often mistaken for Hindus. Around 90% of these Sikhs lived in British Columbia. Canadian politicians, missionaries, and labor unions opposed Asian workers. Industrialists needed labor, allowing Sikhs to establish themselves in the province. In 1906, as 700 South Asian immigrants arrived, attitudes began to change. The disenfranchisement of Sikhs had begun, a period of discrimination, restrictive immigration laws, and barriers to citizenship. The resentment grew among white workers who directed their hostility towards Sikhs due to their distinct appearance with turbans and beards. Many false accusations were spread about them, including claims that they had a caste system or carried diseases. A racist song called "White Canada Forever" was even created to reinforce these prejudices. This growing racism led to the rejection of a Sikh migrant ship in Vancouver, forcing it to divert to Victoria. In 1907, racial tensions escalated into riots in Vancouver, mainly between white mobs and Asian communities. Punjabis were also targeted, but they fought back, as many were retired soldiers from the Sikh and Punjab regiments. These veterans had experience in battle and often kept ceremonial swords, bayonets, and daggers in their homes. Most of the Sikhs in Canada at the time were former British Army soldiers and their families, known for their loyalty to British colonies. Despite this, the Canadian government turned a blind eye to racist tactics used to discourage Sikh immigration and employment. This eventually led to the complete halt of Indian immigration. Prime Minister Sir Wilfrid Laurier falsely claimed that Indians couldn't adapt to Canada's climate. However, in a private letter, he admitted that Sikhs were actually more adaptable than the Chinese, but still wrongly referred to them as Hindus. As discrimination worsened, in 1907, 1,072 Sikhs left Canada for California. That same year, the Khalsa Diwan Society was established in Vancouver, with branches in Abbotsford, Fraser Mills, New Westminster, and other locations. The government of Canada didn't want Sikhs to have political power. So by March, British Columbia passed a law preventing Sikhs from voting, which was soon followed by restrictions at the municipal and federal levels. Sikhs remained disenfranchised for the next 40 years. In 1908, the Canadian government urged Indian immigrants to move to British Honduras, now Belize, claiming the Mexican climate would suit them better. A Sikh delegate visited and found the conditions unsuitable, advising fellow Punjabis to reject the offer. Instead, another 1,710 Sikhs left British Columbia for California that year. Meanwhile, in Vancouver, Sikh settlers planned to build a temple, carrying lumber on their backs up a hill to construct what would become a significant place of worship. Around this time, future Canadian Prime Minister William Lyon Mackenzie King travelled to London and Calcutta to discuss restricting Indian immigration. The Indian government responded by stopping advertisements about work opportunities in Canada. Canada also introduced new laws targeting Punjabis, including a requirement that immigrants needed $200 to enter, 10 times the previous amount, and a continuous journey rule, meaning immigrants had to travel directly from their home country without stopping, which was nearly impossible from India. These laws slashed the Sikh population in Canada, which had peaked at over 5,000 in 1911, to just about 2,500. Despite these struggles, Sikh communities continued to build places of worship. In 1911, the Gur Sikh temple opened in Abbotsford, marking a major milestone. It was the third Gurdwara in North America and remains the oldest standing one in Canada today. Officially recognized as a National Historic Site in 2002, the Khalsa Diwan Society also built Gurdwaras in Vancouver and Victoria, while Paldhi, British Columbia, became the first and only Sikh settlement in Canada in 1916. Although the Khalsa Diwan Society mainly focused on religious and educational efforts, immigration and racism were constant concerns. Other groups like the United India League in Vancouver and the Hindustani Association in Portland, Oregon, also formed to support the community. Over time, Gurdwaras became key centers for activism. In 1913, Sikhs in California founded the Ghadar Party to fight against British rule in India. Although it initially focused on the discrimination faced by Sikhs in North America, the movement soon spread to British Columbia. Thousands of copies of the Ghadar newspaper were printed and even sent to India, fueling the fight for independence. Pertinently, the new laws targeting Indian immigrants make it nearly impossible for Punjabis to migrate. Because of these unfair laws, a dramatic event unfolded in 1914. A Sikh businessman, Gurdit Singh Sandhu, saw how difficult it was for Punjabis to reach Canada, so he decided to challenge the system. He bought a Japanese ship, the Komagata Maru, and set sail with 376 passengers, mostly Sikhs, along with some Muslims and Hindus, from Hong Kong to Vancouver. When the ship arrived in Vancouver, the Canadian government refused to let the passengers disembark. British Columbia's Premier, Richard McBride, made it clear that they were not welcome. The passengers were forced to stay on board for over 2 months. Only 20 former Canadian residents were allowed to step ashore, while the rest were denied entry. In response, Indo-Canadians and supporters in Canada and the US protested. The Khalsa Diwan Society, which managed Vancouver's Gurdwara, even offered to pay the $200 fee for every passenger, but the government refused. The Shore Committee, formed by Indo-Canadian activists, raised $22,000 to help the passengers and even took the case to court. However, on July 7, 1914, the Supreme Court ruled that it had no power over the government's immigration decisions. Tensions on the ship grew, and on July 19th, when Canadian authorities tried to force it to leave, the frustrated passengers fought back, throwing coal and bricks at the police. The Vancouver Sun newspaper described them as a howling mass of Hindus, using racist language to fuel public anger. Eventually, the Komagata Maru was forced to sail back to India, reaching Calcutta on September 26th. But the ordeal didn't end there. British authorities stopped the ship and tried to force the passengers onto a train back to Punjab. The passengers resisted, wanting to stay in Calcutta. A standoff ensued, and when tensions escalated, British police opened fire, killing 20 and injuring 9 others. This tragic event became known as the Budge Budge Riot. Gurdeep Singh, the man who had organized the voyage, managed to escape and lived in hiding until 1922. Later, at the urging of Mahatma Gandhi, he surrendered to the British and was imprisoned for 5 years. The Komagata Maru incident became a symbol of the struggles faced by Sikhs and other Indian immigrants in Canada. It exposed the deep racial discrimination of the time, but also strengthened the resolve of the community to fight for their rights, a battle that continued for decades. In the early 90s, strict immigration laws made it nearly impossible for South Asians in Canada to bring their families from India. As a result, some people turned to illegal routes, crossing into Canada from Washington through the British Columbia border. When the Canadian government found out, they tightened immigration rules. If a South Asian man stayed outside Canada for more than 3 days, he was denied re-entry for breaking the 3-year limit. By 1937, nearly 300 South Asians were living in British Columbia illegally. The RCMP investigated and solved the case, but instead of deporting them, the Canadian government used this as a chance to negotiate with India. In fact, they encouraged these immigrants to apply for residency in Canada. During the 1940s, South Asians in Canada worked hard to build their lives, despite economic struggles and social discrimination. Jobs were scarce, and wages in British Columbia had dropped by over 20%. White employers hired Asian workers, which caused resentment among many locals. This led to a flawed minimum wage law where Asian workers were paid 25% less than others. To survive, South Asian families lived together under one roof, supporting each other through tough times. In 1943, a 12-member delegation from the Khalsa Diwan Society met with Premier John Hart. They argued that without the right to vote, South Asians were treated as second-class citizens. As a result, in 1945, the government granted voting rights to South Asians who had served in World War II. By 1947, thanks to the efforts of the Khalsa Diwan Society, all South Asians in Canada won the right to vote. A survey in 1944 found that there were 1,756 Sikhs in Canada, with 98% of them living in British Columbia, the main entry point for Sikh immigrants. It wasn't until the 1950s that more Sikhs started moving to Ontario. In 1954, Sikhs in Canada celebrated the birth of Guru Nanak for the first time after a group of Sikhs arrived from England, thanks to the easing of immigration laws. More gurdwaras, Sikh temples, were built, strengthening the Sikh community in Ontario. Around this time, Sikhs also became active in politics. After the East Indian Welfare Association was founded, the first Sikh was elected to a city council in Mission, BC. By the following year, 2,148 Sikhs were living in Canada. In 1950, an important moment in Sikh Canadian history took place. Naranjan Giani Singh Grewal became the first Sikh and first South Asian in Canada and North America to be elected to public office. After 25 years in Canada and moving from Toronto to British Columbia, he won a seat on the Mission, BC Board of Commissioners, defeating 6 other candidates. He was re-elected in 1952, and by 1954, he made history again by becoming mayor of Mission. After his election, he published a message in the local newspaper. "Thank you, citizens of Mission City. It is a credit to this community to elect the first East Indian to public office in the history of our great dominion. It shows your broad-mindedness, tolerance, and consideration." Grewal was more than just a politician. He was a successful businessman, philanthropist, and sportsman. As a millwright and union official, he became one of the biggest employers in the northern Fraser Valley, owning 6 sawmills and helping create Mission's municipal tree farm. Even though he was a business leader, he was strongly pro-Labour. He criticised the BC government's forestry policies, calling the licence holders timber maharajas, warning that a few big corporations would soon control the entire industry, similar to the zamindar system in South Asia. In 1956, Gruel ran for the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, which later became the New Democratic Party in the Dewdney riding, but was unsuccessful. Despite his contributions to British Columbia's forestry industry, racism still existed, especially in higher society. During his campaign, he received personal threats. After the election, his house and all 6 of his mills were burned down by arsonists. 1 year later, on July 17, 1957, while on a business trip in Seattle, he was found dead in a motel, shot in the head under suspicious circumstances. Though his life was cut short, his legacy remains. Gruel Street in Mission was named in his honor, remembering a man who broke barriers for Sikh Canadians and fought for justice. Meanwhile, World War II had weakened the British Empire, forcing Britain to leave the subcontinent in 1947, but India was partitioned and Punjab, the homeland of Sikhs, was divided between India and Pakistan. This led to massive violence, riots and chaos, forcing millions to flee their homes. Sikhs, who had lived in what became Pakistan for generations, lost their land, businesses and wealth overnight. Many were displaced, struggling to rebuild their lives in India. The trauma of partition left deep scars, and some Sikhs began looking for stability elsewhere. Countries like Canada seemed like a better option as many of their co-religious people settled there, offering safety, jobs and opportunities. Over time, many Sikhs migrated, hoping to start fresh and secure a better future for their families. In the 1960s and 1970s, tens of thousands of skilled and highly educated Sikhs immigrated to Canada, settling mainly in cities along the Toronto-Windsor corridor. As their numbers grew, they began establishing temporary gurdwaras in major cities, extending as far east as Montreal. The first gurdwara in eastern Canada was built in 1965, followed by the construction of permanent Sikh temples and community centres. Today, most cities across Canada have multiple gurdwaras, each representing different religious, social or political perspectives. These gurdwaras provide a full range of religious services, with Sunday prayers being central. After prayers, many communities offer langar, a free meal served by the Sangat, community leaders, and the congregation. By 1979, as the Sikh Canadian population became more diverse, they celebrated the 500th birthday of Guru Amar Das, marking the beginning of annual Nagar Kirtan processions across Canada. This period also saw major growth in the Khalsa Diwan society, which expanded significantly due to the immigration boom. To honor Guru Amar Das, the society purchased an adjacent building, transforming it into a school, museum, daycare and gurdwara. In the early 1980s, the Khalsa Diwan society continued to expand, even building a sports complex for the community. Around this time, Canada also saw the formation of its first officially registered Sikh organization, the Federation of Sikh Societies of Canada. Back in India, the 1984 military attack on the Golden Temple, a sacred site for Sikhs, deeply angered the Sikh community worldwide, including those in Canada. Popularly known as Operation Blue Star. This event, followed by anti-Sikh riots, created fear, insecurity, and a sense of betrayal among Sikhs in India. Many faced violence, discrimination, and economic hardship, making them feel unsafe in their own country. The exact number of Sikhs killed during Operation Blue Star in June 1984 remains disputed. Official Indian government reports estimate around 400 to 500 deaths, including civilians, militants, and soldiers. However, independent sources and Sikh organizations claim the death toll was much higher, ranging from several thousand to 10,000. As a result, a new wave of Sikh migration began, with many seeking refuge in Canada and other Western countries. The attack reinforced the belief that Sikhs had better opportunities and security abroad, further accelerating their migration in search of justice and stability. Currently, Sikhs are one of the biggest non-Christian religious groups in Canada, and the largest South Asian community in the country. While most Sikhs around the world live in Asia, about 2.6% of them are in North America. In Canada, the Sikh population has grown significantly over the years. There were nearly 771,800 Sikhs in 2021, compared to just around 147,400 in 1991. A big reason for this growth is immigration. In the 1990s, about 5% of the 1.8 million newcomers to Canada were Sikh. Today, most Sikhs in Canada live in Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta,